Hello friends, in this video I will be covering about the scope. So what is scope? I can say that scope is a virtual environment where methods and variables live. Where does methods and variable lives? They lives in a virtual environment. How can you access those methods and variable? You can just point it to the with the self. Self just refers to that scope. Okay, and if you are in the scope, you can access those variable and methods, method name and variable. But if you are not in the scope, or in other words, if you are out of the scope, then you cannot access those methods and variable. So self is the only keyword that can point to that scope. Okay, so self is different in different scopes. I will show you with an example. Okay, so if you open this terminal IRV, and if you ask what is the current scope here, so it will show you the main. So we are in the main scope, means here, that is that is the main scope. You can visualize this class object, O capital, class object, and inside this def there is a method defined, the main, and inside that we are here. Okay, and that object has been initialized and method is called. So this visualize this one, and we are inside this here, inside the main. Okay, whatever we define here, that is actually defined inside this main. Okay, so this, assume this like this, and if we print the self, that will be the main. Okay, and if you ask the self dot class, it will be an object. This is just for an visualization that we are in the main scope. Here, there, that is the main scope. Okay, and there are three keywords that change the scope value, that is class, module, and def. Only these three value changes the scope, and we are in the main scope here. And just let me give you with one example. Here we are in the here the value of self will be main, that we will be in the main scope, and we have defined the keyword module. Then the scope changes. Now if you ask the value of self, it will point out to the my module only. So the scope has been changed. But if you ask means how the next scope will change, the class and def, these changes the scope value, module, class, and def. And what is the value of self inside this class? It will be a person. So that is the scope of this person class. This self will point to the scope of this class. Okay, and again this keyword we have found. Now this self value has been changed. Now the value of self will be here, this, that's an object. Okay, and again the class, that's an eigen class here, that's an eigen class. It again changes the scope. If you ask what is the scope now, so scope is now class of person, eigen class of the person. Okay, person eigen class, that is the scope here. If you ask, that will be the scope of this eigen scope. Okay, and this is the class method. So the value of self here is person. Now I have shown all of these as a visualization purpose. Just uh, let me run each code, and will show you the value of each self, how does it change in the different scope. Let me close this. Now let me show you with an example that what is the value of self inside this class. Okay, it will return the person, the value of self inside this class, only inside this class. So I'm just assigning this self value inside one of the class variable, and then now I'm accessing this class variable. Okay, I'm just opening it again. Now just define this class, now initializing this class, now calling this method. Okay, it has returned person. So this class, the value of self here assigned in a class variable, and it returns the person. So that we are in the person scope. That I've just told you that we are, the value of self here is person. Okay, now let me show you this the value of this self, because the scope has already changed because we have defined one method. So the value of self will be here is the person scope. Let me show you. I've defined one class here. Okay, now just initialize that class, new, and call this method. Okay, it just tell you put self, the value of self. This is the object that is pointing to this scope. Means inside this method can be accessible only with this object. Okay, the is, otherwise that we cannot access. Okay, so the next value I can show you here with this example with the Eisen scope. Okay, so that is an Eisen class I have defined. And if you ask the because it has already changed the scope, because we have defined the class, and then here the value will be person, but inside this class that value will be changed. That is the Eisen class of person. Okay, let me show you. Let me remove this as well. Here it just print class of person, right? Just see this. And I've already told you that we can define this Eisen class with this as well. Another syntax. This is the another syntax class. And you can also print here the put self. The same thing you will get, the class of person. Class of person. So that the scope is also changed inside this. Okay, now we have covered all these things. Now I will tell you this scope, the module. Put self, it has just printed my module. So that is all the self values that changes with these keywords, class, def, and module. Okay. Okay, now we will be practicing some questions. So you can just pause the video and just think of that what is will be the value. Okay, so just this is, there is one class, we have defined one class variable, and now class, that is an inner class. Okay, now we have defined one instance method, and now we are accessing this class variable. So just pause this video and just tell the answer. We will be able to access this class variable or not. Okay, so now I will run this. Okay, and then if you just initialize this and upper class and in the inner class, and then calling this method, so it has changed the scope, so it will not be accessible. Answer is not accessible. Uninitialized class variable means this class variable is not accessible inside the other class because the scope has been changed. So that is the one question. Another question we will be trying that module also changes the scope. Okay, so what I am doing in this question, there is one class. Okay, and I have included one module here that is just printing the value, and I am assigning this class variable a value, and we are just printing this class variable inside this method. We have included this module here. Okay, you can. Okay, so and this is just another method I will show you later on. So just let me define this module. Let me clear this up. I have just defined this module. Now just tell me the answer, and then what if I call this method, will I get this value or not? The answer is no, because uh, the module has already changed the scope. Scope means the module, it has changed the scope, and the class, it has different scope. The We have defined this variable inside the class scope, but if we are accessing this class variable inside the module scope, then this is not accessible. Just let me show you. I have initialized this. I have just initialized the value of this. I have just called this class variable, and you will see that it is not accessible. Uninitialized class variable at the rate class variable in module, in my module, means we cannot access this in my module because it has different scope. But you can access this class variable inside the class. Okay, inside this class variable you can access this by calling this method. See, I am a class variable. You can access inside the class, but not in the module method. Okay, so there is the last one question that I wanted to highlight here. That's an easy one. Just think of this. The practice quiz. There is one instance method. I have initialized this, and inside the class method, the Eisen class method, we are just trying to access this instance variable. Okay, so I have just initialized one object, and the second object, there is one. I'm just calling this method so that this value will be initialized. Okay, so yeah. For one object, I have initialized this one. You can see it here, this instance variable for this object, and again for the object 2. Okay, this is the instance variable for this object 2. But if I am trying to access this with the class method, then just tell me the output. It will be the nil, because we cannot access this instance variable. The scope has been changed. This is in the class scope, but this is Eisen class scope. So that is why we are not able to access this one. Thank you, and that's it for this video.